What is the reason that although we know the 5 aggregates of attachment are impermanent and not self, yet we still cling so tightly onto them? Well, in the Buddha's teachings, in the suttas, the Buddha says, the reason why we don't see things as they really are, yata bhutang jnana dasana, seeing and knowing things as they really are, is because we are covered by the 5 hindrances. Just now I mentioned the 5 hindrances as sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and doubt. So the most important thing in meditation is actually to get rid of the 5 hindrances. Because if you don't get rid of the 5 hindrances, then whatever type of meditation you do is of not much use. That is why in the Majjhima Nikaya, Venerable Ananda said, he was asked, what type of meditation is praised by the Buddha? What type of meditation is not praised by the Buddha? And the Venerable Ananda said, that type of meditation where the 5 hindrances are abandoned is praised by the Buddha. That type of meditation where the 5 hindrances are not abandoned is not praised by the Buddha. And what type of meditation is it that will help you to get rid of the 5 hindrances? It is actually deep concentration. When the mind becomes deeply concentrated, then the mind is focused. And when the mind is focused, it comes under control. And when the mind comes under control, these 5 hindrances are naturally reduced without any effort. It is stated in the suttas, there is an unconscious restraint. You don't make a conscious restraint. The restraint is an unconscious restraint without any effort. If you are able to bring your mind to a state of one-pointedness, then the 5 hindrances, you don't have to make an effort to reduce them. They become naturally reduced. And when you come out of concentration, come out of samadhi, they remain reduced for some time. Just as I just now mentioned about the Buddha, because he has the pain in the body is breaking up, he goes into deep samadhi. And after he comes out of deep samadhi, the pain is not there for some time. But later, the thing wears away, and then the pain may come back. So if we meditate continuously, or every day we can abide in samadhi, then our hindrances are reduced naturally to a very low level. And when the hindrances are reduced to a low level, then you see things as they really are. And when you see things as they really are, then you know what to do. On top of that, knowing things, knowing what to do is one thing. Being able to do it is another thing. That also you are able to do only with strong samadhi, because if you have strong samadhi, then the mind is very strong, very firm. If you know that something should be done, you do it. If you know that something should not be done, you don't do it. For example, knowing is not enough. Why? For example, a person who commits adultery, a person who has a family, has a spouse, husband or wife, and children. Because of weakness, because of the 5 hindrances, the sensual desire is very strong. For example, the man, he's working very closely with the secretary, works every night, very late hours with the secretary, goes to dinner with the secretary, very close to the secretary, spends almost the whole day with the secretary, even more hours than with his wife. So it is not difficult for him, perhaps, to fall in love with the secretary, because the secretary is very young and attractive. So he knows he should not do this thing, but the 5 hindrances very strong, sensual desire very strong. So even though he knows it's not enough, because the mind is not strong enough to resist. But if he practices meditation and he has strong samadhi, then firstly he sees things very clearly. He sees that if he walks this path, it's going to cause a lot of problems, not only to himself, to his family members, and a lot of people are going to hate him. Firstly, he sees things very clearly. Secondly, he has the strength of mind to resist. A lot of us, we don't have the strength of mind to resist. We do things because we don't have a strength of mind. Therefore, the samadhi is very important. That's why if you look into the suttas, the Buddha is always talking about samadhi, always praising the jhanas. In fact, in one sutta, the Buddha said, samadhi mago, samadhi kummago. Samadhi is concentration, mago is the path. Samadhi is no concentration, kummago is the wrong path. So the Buddha has said very clearly, concentration is the path, no concentration is the wrong path. The second question, please suggest ways which the Buddha advises to reduce this clinging to the 5 aggregates. I suppose the best way is to study the suttas. We study the suttas and we see the Buddha is trying to help us exactly this, to reduce our clinging to the 5 aggregates. And because the Buddha is trying to help us, he's explaining so many suttas to us. These suttas are extremely important because they explain the Dhamma from various angles of looking. If the suttas were not important, the Buddha would not have taken so much effort and spoken about 5,000 to 6,000 suttas, in the Nikayas. Throughout the 45 years of his ministry, he was giving discourses and explaining so many things to us because he wanted us to reduce this clinging to our 5 aggregates, etc. So when we study the suttas, we know exactly how to practice because the Buddha has given very clear instructions. So having got the instructions from the Buddha, then we try to put it into practice. You see, these two things are very important if we want to practice the spiritual path. One is listening to the Buddha's words, the suttas. The second one is carrying them out, putting them into practice. That means meditation. These two must go together, the theory and the practice. If you just have the practice without the theory, you won't make very much progress. And you have the practice without you have theory without the practice, or you have practice without theory, you won't go very, very far. What are the foundations that we should fulfill in the spiritual path? It depends whether you are a renunciant, a monk, or a lay person. For a monk, the Buddha has given very clear instructions. There is certain suttas where the Buddha has explained, very clear instructions. And there are certain things that he has instructed, for example, sila, keeping the precepts, contentment for a monk, and then seclusion, guarding the sense doors, moderation in eating, devoted to wakefulness, that means not sleeping too much, sati sampajanya, mindfulness and awareness. So that is for a monk. But for lay persons, the Buddha gave an advice in the Samyutta Nikaya that lay persons should study the discourses of the Buddha. Because if you study the discourses of the Buddha, then you are able to get right view. Because the Buddha said in the Majjhima Nikaya that if you want to practice the Aryan Eightfold Path, the 8 factors of the Aryan Eightfold Path, the most important one and the one that you have to start with is the first factor, which is right view. If you don't have right view, then however long you practice, it's no use. You haven't entered the path. You haven't entered the door. So right view is the most important. I don't know, I'm sure many of you know, about 2 years ago, one of our very strong Buddhists who had been meditating for, I hear, 20 over years, she changed her religion. Why? After practicing 20 over years, she can change her Buddhist religion. That shows the foundation is not there. She didn't get the right view. If she had got the right view, she would never be able to be swayed. So right view is very important. And the Buddha said in the Majjhima Nikaya, to get right view, only 2 conditions are necessary. The first condition is studying the suttas. The second one is to have yoniso manasikara. Yoniso manasikara can be translated as thorough consideration or simply translated as proper attention. When you listen to the suttas or when you read the suttas, put all your attention there. So with just these 2 conditions, if you study enough suttas, you can have right view. That is, the Buddha is quite clear about this. So when you have right view, you have entered the path, and actually you have entered the stream. A person with right view, the Buddha says, is a person who has a basic understanding of the 4 noble truths. And if you have a basic understanding of the 4 noble truths, you have entered the first path. You are already an Arya. And if you are already an Arya, then you have unshakable faith. Nothing can shake your faith. And the next life, you will meet the Dhamma again. Or you will practice the Dhamma again. And at the most, you will have only 7 more lifetimes in samsara before you attain the highest bliss of Nibbana. So studying the suttas is very important. Another foundation is sila. Sila. Keeping the 5 precepts. And if possible, once a week, the Buddha advised lay persons should keep the 8 precepts. The 8 precepts are quite important because during the Buddha's time, lay people used to practice the 8 precepts. You know, the 8 precepts are practiced on the 8th day of the, formally practiced on the 8th day of the lunar month, the 15th day, the 23rd day, and the last day, 29th or 30th of the lunar month. But that was during the Buddha's time. And nowadays, if you just practice once a week, you choose a day that is convenient for you, say Sunday or any day of the week, and you try to keep the 8 precepts. That is very good because the Buddha says, if you do that, then your chances of getting a good rebirth are very high. Either you come back as a human being or even go to heaven. So that is the precept. The other thing for lay persons to practice is charity, dana. Don't think that you want to practice only the higher wisdom and you don't need to practice sila, don't need to practice dana. This is wrong because the Buddha said in the suttas that dana and sila is very basic. If a person does not do these 2 things, keeping the precepts and doing some charity, that person is very likely to be reborn into the woeful planes. You may be very smart, but you may be a very smart ghost. You see? So, you need these 2 things, dana and sila. So, if in the suttas, the Buddha said, if you do keep these 2 things, dana and sila, to a small degree, tampo, then you can be reborn as a human being, but a poor human being, because you have little blessings. Poor human being. If you keep these 2 things, sila and dana, to a middle degree, medium degree, you will be reborn as a human being, but a rich human being with a lot of blessings. And if you practice these 2 things, sila and dana, to a high degree, you will be reborn as a deva or devi. So the teaching is very clear. It depends on us which way we want to walk, which path we choose. So dana and sila are also important. Of course, the other thing that is important, if you can spend a little bit of time to meditate in the morning or at night, it's very good for you because you learn to keep your mind still. Try to keep your mind on one object, to learn to control the mind. The Buddha said in the Anguttara Sutta that An uncontrolled mind gives us a lot of suffering. A controlled mind gives us a lot of happiness. So we learn to control our mind. When we learn to control our mind, the 5 hindrances reduce. When the 5 hindrances reduce, they don't give us so much suffering. So these are the foundations. What ingredients should one have to be successful in walking the spiritual path? The most important ingredient is earnestness. Earnestness or sincerity. If you are sincere, then you will bend your time, you will use your time whenever you can for this purpose. The trouble with most of us, we have a lot of desires. When you have too many desires, then our energy is split, is divided. And when your energy is divided, you cannot put your mind wholeheartedly on one thing. Don't have too many desires. You have to examine yourself and be frank with yourself. What do you want in life? Try to ask, what are your priorities? Then see your priorities. This is the most important thing. This is the second most important thing. And this is the third. This is the fourth. This is the fifth. Then you know you don't have time to do all these things. So you try those that are not so important to cut it down. And that which is important to you, you put more time, more effort on it. And if you are sincere, then you will be successful. If we do 1 day's work, we get 1 day's gaji, 1 day's wage. If you do 1 month's work, you get 1 month's gaji. So in the same way, on the spiritual path, if you exert a certain effort, you get a certain result. The more effort you put, more result. Less effort, less result. So we have to choose. So the most important thing is earnestness. Most of us, we try to compromise. If you try to compromise, then we are not being very sincere. And if you are not very sincere, then you won't be very successful. Are the suttas so important? Why? Oh yes, the suttas are extremely important. When the Buddha was about to pass into Nibbana, somebody asked the Buddha, Bhagava, Lord, after you have passed into Nibbana, whom should we take as our teacher? They probably thought that the Buddha was going to appoint a successor. Instead, the Buddha said, take the Dhamma Vinaya as your teacher. That means our teacher is the suttas and the Vinaya. Because the Vinaya does not concern lay people. So you must take the suttas as your teacher. Because in the Anguttara Nikaya 4.180, the Buddha said, if any monk says that such and such is the Buddha's teachings, you don't reject his words, you don't welcome his words, but you compare what he says to be the Buddha's teachings with the suttas. And if it does not agree, you don't accept him. That is why in the second Sangha Council, it was decided that we don't always follow our senior monk. Whatever our senior monk says, if it agrees with the suttas and the Vinaya, we follow him. If he teaches something to us which is not in agreement with the suttas and the Vinaya, we don't follow him. There is a very interesting sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya where the Buddha said, he must be referring to the future, some time like now. The Buddha said, you may have a very senior monk, long gone forth, and very well known, world renowned, for example. And he may be he may have a large following of disciples, monks and nuns or lay person disciples, a huge following of disciples. And he may be very learned in the books. Even such a monk, the Buddha says, can have wrong view. Can have wrong view. So don't think that because such and such a monk is very famous, that everything that he says is correct. Not necessary. You must compare whatever monk says to be the Buddha's teachings with the suttas. If it does not agree with the suttas, then don't follow him. Our only teacher, our one and only teacher is the Buddha. That is why the Buddha told us to take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. And during the Buddha's time, the Sangha actually referred to the Bhikkhu Sangha. Sometimes, of course, it's mentioned the Aryan Sangha, but more often in the suttas, when a person takes refuge, he says he takes refuge with the Bhikkhu Sangha. Because it's hard to tell who is the Aryan Sangha. Aryan Sangha is like a shadow. You can't tell who is the Aryan Sangha. If you can't tell who is the Aryan Sangha, how can you take refuge with the Aryan Sangha? So during the Buddha's time, they took refuge with the Bhikkhu Sangha. And also because you can't tell who is an Arya, so you have to rely on the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Bhikkhu Sangha. So there are two suttas. After the Buddha passed away, an Arahant was talking to some lay person, and the lay person was so impressed with the Arahant's teaching that he wanted to take refuge with the Arahant. And the Arahant said, no, you can't take refuge with me. You must take refuge only with the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. So this man thought the Buddha is alive somewhere. He asked the Arahant, he said, where's the Buddha? I don't mind walking a long distance to take refuge with him. Then the Arahant said, oh, he's entered Nibbana. Even though he's entered Nibbana, you still take refuge with the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. So remember, the Buddha said, when he was about to pass into Nibbana, he said, after I'm gone, take the Dhamma Vinaya as your teacher. In other words, the suttas for lay persons, for suttas. So when you take refuge with the Buddha, now it means you take refuge with the suttas. And when you take refuge with the Dhamma, it also means you take refuge with the suttas. When you take refuge with the Sangha, you don't know who is the Sangha, who is the Aryan Sangha, right? So, and the Buddha says, even a famous monk can have wrong view. So the only thing that is reliable is the suttas, the original suttas. And the original suttas are found in the earliest 4 Nikayas. The last Nikaya has 15 books. According to the Burmese, they have 18 books. They added another 3 in 1956. And out of these 15 books, 5 are quite reliable because they are consistent with the earliest 4 Nikayas. But the other 10 books, they have contradictions with the earliest 4 Nikayas. So only 5 books out of the 15 books in the Khuddaka Nikaya, the last Nikaya, is reliable. Other than that, the earliest 4 Nikayas are very reliable because they are very consistent. And you don't hardly find any contradictions. So we should put our effort to study the 4 Nikayas. We are very, very lucky, You could say that you are more lucky than a person who is born during the Buddha's time. Why? Because if you were born during the Buddha's time and you were in India, the chances firstly of meeting the Buddha are very slim, right? Secondly, if you meet the Buddha might come to your kampong and stay for a few days. And after a few days, he may walk away again because the Buddha was always walking all around India. So if you met the Buddha, you might hear the suttas, the discourses from the Buddha for a few days. And after that, you don't see the Buddha again for a long time. The longest time the Buddha would stay in one place is 4 months during the Vasa, rain season. And during 4 months, how much discourses can you hear? I don't think very, very many, right? 4 months times 30 days is 120 days, right? 120 days, how many discourses can you hear? Even if the Buddha were to give a discourse every day, it's about 120 suttas. But now in our Nikayas, we have 5,000 suttas. 45 years of sweat, of the Buddha's sweat, in our 4 Nikayas. And you are able to study all the 5,000 suttas now. So you are more lucky now than somebody born during the Buddha's time, right? And in the suttas, the Buddha said, he looked into the past, and he looked into the past 91 kapas, 91 world cycles. And he saw only 6 Buddhas. Only 6 Buddhas appeared in 91 world cycles. One world cycle is extremely long, the Buddha said, hard to calculate the length of a world cycle. That means on an average, it takes more than 10 world cycles before one Buddha appears. So now, if you don't take the opportunity to study the Buddha's words, on the average, you have to wait for more than 10 world cycles. How many more rebirths before you meet with the Dhamma, right? It's easier to understand the Dhammapada than the suttas, correct? But cheap things are not good. Good things are not cheap, right? So you want a high reward, you must put a lot of effort. But I have taken a little bit of trouble to explain the suttas. The Samyutta Nikaya and the Anguttara Nikaya are the two most important Nikayas out of the four. Because they contain the most suttas. Samyutta Nikaya contains about 2,000 suttas, Anguttara Nikaya about 2,000 suttas. And I've spoken the Samyutta and Anguttara Nikayas in Hokkien, in the Penang Buddhist Association between 1991 and 93, I think. So there are about 31 tapes. You can approach our brother Kok Leong here. He has the tapes, and also our brother Fong, yes, brother Fong of Mahindrama. He has our Hokkien tapes, the suttas. And also I have tried to give sutta talks in English in KL. So far I've given about 47 talks, 48 talks on the Anguttara Nikaya. They are coming to an end. In a few more, by 50 something, I will finish the series of Anguttara Nikaya, and later perhaps I might start on the Samyutta Nikaya. So if you find it difficult to read the books, actually the books are difficult to read because the only translations available are from the Pali Text Society, and those books were translated by very learned professors, Professors Rhys Davids, and that company of scholars. And because they were very learned, they used high-class English, very high-class English, poetical English, old-fashioned English. And you might find it hard to understand those. You might have to use the dictionary a lot. So you might find it easier to listen to the suttas, because I have taken the trouble to read the suttas and then try to explain the difficult points. So if you are interested, I would very much encourage you to get a set of the tapes for yourself. Because these suttas are not like stories. You don't listen to them once only. You have to listen to them again and again and again. Each time you listen to them, you catch more and more the meaning of the suttas. In the suttas, the Buddha mentioned there are 5 instances when you can become an Arya or become enlightened. 5 occasions. What are the 5 occasions? The first one, when you listen to Dhamma. That means either you listen to the tapes or you read the suttas. That is the first instance. Because the Buddha says, when you listen to Dhamma and when you understand the Dhamma, the joy of Dhamma arises. And when you have the joy of Dhamma in you, the mind becomes tranquil. And the mind, after the mind becomes tranquil, it becomes concentrated. And a concentrated mind is a basis for wisdom to arise. So a person can become an Arya, firstly by listening to the sutta. The second instance, the Buddha says, is when a person teaches the Dhamma. When a person teaches and explains the Dhamma, the understanding of the Dhamma gives, joy arises as a result. So when joy arises, then the mind becomes tranquil, becomes concentrated, and wisdom arises. So the second instance, when a person becomes an Arya, is during teaching of the Dhamma. The third one is when we repeat the Dhamma. During the Buddha's time, they had no books, so they had to learn the suttas by heart and repeat the suttas. So each time you repeat the suttas, you understand it more. So in the same way, the joy of Dhamma arises, the mind becomes tranquil, concentrated, and wisdom arises. So the third time a person becomes an Arya is when he repeats the suttas. The fourth one is when a person reflects on the teachings. Having heard the suttas, you think about it, try to examine whether it's true or not, whether you can see it in this lifetime or not, and try to examine the various aspects of the Buddha's words. Then when we reflect on the teaching, understanding, joy arises similarly, and you become an Arya. That's the fourth occasion. Only the last one is during meditation. When you contemplate on the Samadhi Nimitta, is mentioned, when you contemplate on the sign of concentration, then you get wisdom. So you see, the first four have to do with understanding the suttas. That is why I always advise people to study the suttas. You'll never regret it. Even you invest $1,000 to buy the Pali Text Society books, the two Nikayas, you won't regret it, because they are worth their weight in gold. The suttas are difficult to read and understand. From your experience, how should we approach the study of the suttas? It's true, the suttas are difficult to read and understand. But when I started to read the Buddha's teachings, I also found them difficult to understand. But I had the patience to continue reading. I came from a Catholic school, Catholic school for 12 years, from Standard 1 until Form 6. When I was in Form 5, I was convinced I was going to become a Catholic. But when I was in Form 6, I started to think, and I had a lot of questions, and I gave a lot of questions to the brothers, Christian brothers. They could not answer my questions. So because of doubt, later I gave up the Christian religion. But when I came to the Buddhist religion, I found it very difficult to understand, not like Christianity and other religions, so easy to understand, right? Because there are not very many concepts, not very many principles. So I continued to read, even though I didn't understand, I continued to read. And as I read further, I found that the things that I didn't understand earlier began to click and began to understand. It's like putting a jigsaw puzzle together. When you start putting the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle together, you don't see the whole picture, right? But as you put more and more pieces together, slowly you begin to see the overall picture. So in the same way, the more suttas we read, then slowly the pieces fall into place. And that is why the Buddha explains 5,000 suttas, because he tried to explain the Dhamma from various angles, so that when you look at the Dhamma from more angles, the more you understand. But if you find it difficult to read the suttas, as I suggested, you try to listen to the tapes. They would be much easier for you to understand. And if you do that, I hope you make a copy for yourself so that you can listen to them again and again. How are we able to help a person to overcome fear of death, especially when a person has no Dhamma? The Buddha in the suttas mentioned a few reasons why people have fear when they are about to pass away. One is because they have no understanding of the Dhamma, so they don't know what life is all about. They don't know where they are going for rebirth. Another reason why people fear is because they have done a lot of bad karma. So if that person still has time, then we should encourage the person to keep the 5 precepts, not to do evil. By keeping the basic precepts, then the person does not do evil, and that person acquires certain blessings. The blessings of keeping the precepts can support a person when a person is about to die. Another one is charity. Encourage that person to do charity, himself or herself. Either bring that person to come to the temple to give dana to the monks, or bring that person to the old folks' home to do charity and help the old folks take a bath or cut their fingernails or wash their hair or whatever, and bring them to orphanages, or do other kinds of social work. There's various kinds of social work. For example, become one of those befrienders, where people are thinking of committing suicide. Then they have no other way. They phone up the befrienders and get somebody to talk to them. And there are other social work, like AIDS organizations, etc., etc. And so these are the various ways. But if that person is too old and that person cannot go himself or herself to do charity, then you do it on behalf of that person, and you tell that person that I'm going to the temple to do some charity. You like to maybe mona, they say mona, isn't it? $1 or $2, and then I go and buy something on your behalf and do the charity for you lah. It is when the person is still alive, we should try to do as much as we can for that person, because after that person has passed away, it's difficult to help that person. There is one sutta where a Brahmin came to ask the Buddha. The Brahmins have a tradition, a little bit like Chinese, Chinese during Chengbeng, All Souls Day, we go to the cemetery, we clean the cemetery, and then we offer food. But after praying and offering food, half an hour later, we take the food back and makan ourselves. Yes or not? The Indians are a bit different. After they offer the food, they burn it, they burn it. They don't eat at all. They burn everything. So this Brahmin came and asked the Buddha. He said, we do these Shraddha offerings for the dead. Do the dead people actually get it? Then the Buddha said, it depends where they are reborn. If they are reborn in heaven, they won't get it. And probably they don't need it also. If they are reborn as a human being, they won't get it, the Buddha said. If they are reborn as an animal, they won't get it. If they are reborn in hell, you can't help them. They won't get it also. Only if they are reborn as a ghost, they can get it. The Buddha didn't explain why, but I guess because when a person becomes a ghost, and that person is hungry and shivering from the cold, person goes here, goes there, doesn't get any help, then that person would think, who is going to help me? Nobody wants to help me. Perhaps my son or my daughter may think of me. So ghosts like to come back to their homes. That's why Chinese believe after 7 days they come back. But after 7 days, if you hear sounds of them coming back, it's not a very good sign. They're born as a ghost. So because they come back and you do merit and you transfer to them, and they get to know it, that they can get. So only if the relative is reborn as a ghost, that there's a chance that that person will get it. Not if that person is born somewhere else. Then this Brahmin asked the Buddha, he said, if my relative is not born as a ghost and I make this offering, then who gets it? Then the Buddha said, if your particular relative is not born as a ghost, there might be other ghosts who were related to you. So there might be some ghosts related to us in the past. That's why some people dream of ghosts, some people see ghosts, because these ghosts may be related to us in the past and they come for help, you see. So these other ghosts will get it. Then the Buddha said, even if you don't have any relatives as ghosts, you still get the merit because you did that offering. Yes. So that is a sutta. So thinking about this sutta, if our relative has passed away, the chances of helping that person is not very great. So while that person is still alive, you try to help that person as much as you can, especially if that person is very old and the time is very short. Because the best thing actually is to teach that person Dhamma. Let that person listen to tapes and all that. Start with very simple tapes about karma and all that. By the way, when we transfer merit, it's not only ghosts that will get it. Whatever beings around us who want the merit, for example, tree, devas, dato kong, our house spirit, if they want the share of the merit, they come near. And when they come near, they know that we are transferring merit to them, they may get it. But if our relative has passed away and we want to do merit for them, it's the best thing is 1 day or 2 days or 3 days before that dana, at night you light an incense and you inform them, tomorrow I'm going to do the dana on your behalf, and I will transfer the merit to you. So you inform them beforehand, then only you do the dana, and later you transfer the merit to them again.